Hi, welcome back to the High Ticket Woman podcast. This is Debbie Caudle, your host, and this is part 3 of a 3-part series on mismatches in marriage. So the first 2 parts of the series, we looked at mismatched libidos, how sexual desire can create tension when one spouse wants sex more often than the other. And then part 2, we looked at mismatched love languages, how couples can miss each other like 2 ships in the night, even though both are trying to show and express love to each other. And both of them can quietly erode connection in marriage if they're not discussed, because they send hidden messages like, you don't want me or you don't see me. But mismatches is, I'm going to struggle with this word this whole episode, just like I did last time. Mismatches don't just stop there. They show up in our daily rhythms too, in how we spend time with each other, how we handle routines, and how we recharge our energy. And that's what we're going to talk about today, mismatched lifestyles. Let's start off with a scripture. I love what it says in Amos 3:3. Do 2 walk together unless they have agreed to do so? But here's the thing, agreement doesn't mean sameness. It doesn't mean we have to be identical clones of each other. No, it means finding a way to walk side by side, even though you're wired differently. Let's take a look at Leah and Aaron, one of my composite couples. Okay, this is a composite of all the couples that I've worked with in the 32 years that I've been doing this. Aaron is a homebody, and he works really long hours during the week. By the time Friday night rolls around, he's exhausted, and all he really wants to do is rest. He just wants a quiet weekend at home. He wants to sleep in on Saturday, and he wants some quality time with his wife without a full jam-packed schedule of things to do. But Leah's the opposite. She has been looking forward to the weekend since the last weekend ended, because she loves to get out and go. She's energized by people. So by the end of the week, she's antsy, right? She's ready to get dressed up. She wants to go out. She wants to connect with friends. For her, weekends are about fun, laughter, and shared experiences. And at first in their relationship, these differences didn't feel like a big deal. But over time, they've really become a point of friction between them, because Aaron has begun to feel like Leah is dragging him into plans that he didn't want. All he wanted was a break from work. He just wanted downtime. And Leah has begun to feel like Aaron's holding her back, like he doesn't want to enjoy and experience life with her. And it doesn't just happen on the weekends. It actually shows up in daily life. Aaron comes home from work and he just wants to veg on the couch. I can relate to this. While Leah wants to maybe go out to dinner. And that's sometimes true about Jeff. Or when they're planning a vacation, Aaron, he pictures lazy dates on the beach. That's me. And Leah envisions excursions, activities, full itinerary, right? Well, neither of them are wrong. One's not better than the other, but their mismatched lifestyle leaves them both feeling confused and frustrated. Right now, one of the things that's playing into this dynamic is that Aaron is an introvert and Leah is an extrovert. And this is very, very common in marriages. I want you to imagine that everybody carries an invisible battery pack on, like a backpack, right? With 2 big batteries on their back, okay? Introverts recharge that battery pack by being alone. They need solitude. So socializing, even though it's fun, it's not that they don't like that, but it takes energy. And that battery pack drains faster. The bigger the group, the more people, especially people they don't know, the faster they're going to be depleted. And they need quiet, they need space, and they need downtime to recharge. But extroverts are the exact opposite, depending on how extroverted they are. So they recharge through engagement with people. People charge them up. Too much time alone can make them drain in the same way that introverts are drained by being around people. So they start to feel discouraged, depressed, right? And bored. But even goes beyond boredom, just like they get antsy, right? They need to get out and they need to go and they need to do. So in marriage, when one spouse needs rest while the other pays connection, we got a problem, don't we? The introvert feels exhausted by that constant social need for activity, or need for social activity would be a better way of saying it. The extrovert feels neglected, maybe even unloved if those social needs aren't being met. So the big problem here is that they're not talking about it. Aaron and Leah, they're not talking about it. Without intentional conversations about this, you're going to have that mismatch, right? And you're going to have a lot of incorrect assumptions about what it means. So just like with part 1 and part 2, meaning is everything. To Aaron, Leah's constant need for plans on the weekend means that she doesn't value his need for rest. But to Leah, Aaron's desire to stay home feels like he doesn't want to be with her or the people that matter to her, besides him, of course. So I want you to really stop and think about the rhythms in your own marriage for a moment. Right? What is it that drains you? Is it people or is it too much time alone? Do you when you're feeling drained, do you crave silence or do you crave connection? Now, what about your spouse? How does your spouse recharge? Look back at your last weekend together. Were you both on the same page? Or were you pulling in different directions? Did you want to do different things? You know, these questions are worth talking about openly with your spouse because so much of the time, the mismatches that occur aren't about preferences as much as they are about energy. Now, if any of this is resonating right now with you, I want you to know this is partly what we do inside my Marriage in Bloom 6-month marriage intensive. So, we can fix this. Just, reach out to me. But why does this really matter? Well, it's not just about schedules. It's not just about when we're going to go out, when we're not going to go out. It's about what the choices mean. Okay. To the introvert, the extrovert can feel really overwhelming and exhausting. But to the extrovert, the introvert can feel disengaged. Okay. And that's what's really critical. And when you don't name this in your marriage, when you don't talk about this, then what you're telling yourself, the story you're telling yourself about this becomes so much worse than the reality. God created differences in husbands and wives, men and women on purpose. He did it on purpose because those differences bring balance to the marriage. One spouse's quiet nature brings peace and calmness. The other's social nature, it can bring joy, spark joy, right? There's a balance there. And it says in Ecclesiastes 4, 2 are better than one. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. So that balance is really, really important. Your spouse's difference is not your enemy. It may be actually a God-given thing to round you out and make you a balanced couple. But how do you actually navigate these differences? It's one thing to know that up here in your head. It's another thing to figure out, like, okay, how do we actually live this? Well, when you talk about this with your spouse, you need to talk not just about what your preferences are. Like, I really want to go out this weekend, honey. Are you going to feel like going out this weekend? Or are you just going to be a bum on the couch, right? That's preference. Talk about energy. So instead say something like, I'm really exhausted tonight. I'm feeling really drained. Can we plan this for tomorrow? Okay. That feels very different to your spouse than saying, I don't want to go. Okay. Another thing you can do is you can alternate the flow of how you do things. So one weekend can be more social, the next can be more restful. Or even within a single weekend, you can have an evening at home to rest, and you can have another evening out. Balance is the key, right? So you also want to find hybrid solutions. Maybe instead of always going out, invite friends over for dinner. Sometimes it's easier for the introvert to socialize if it's in an environment that is more comfortable and familiar. So there's a nice compromise. Better than maybe a full day outing, just agree on a half day with some downtime built in. I was just working with a couple not that long ago. He loves to go four wheeling, and it's not her favorite thing, partly because she doesn't like all the jarring on her body. So we talked about shortening the trip and building some rest and relaxation in between the going there and the coming back. That's what we're talking about when we talk about hybrid solutions, blending rest and connection so that both of you feel like your wants and needs are being considered. Another real key here is that you need to honor your spouse's difference. It's not going to do you any good in your marriage to just resent it, right? Try to focus on how your spouse's difference is balancing you out, is rounding you out. The homebody brings stability and peace. The social butterfly brings laughter and joy, and both are needed in your marriage. And finally, plan with intention. Look, sit down, have a little meeting together, a little social calendar meeting. Look at the calendar together. Be proactive. Plan out what you want your weekend to look like, but also your week, because there needs to be rest and maybe some social connection Monday through, Thursday as well. When couples learn to name and navigate these differences in their rhythm, they stop seeing each other as obstacles and they start working together. That's where you get that harmony and that flow and that balance that we're looking for. We're not trying to eliminate differences. We're trying to figure out how to walk together despite the differences, showing up with curiosity and compassion and patience with each other. Apologies. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this three-part series: mismatched libidos, mismatched love languages, and mismatched lifestyles. And I didn't trip over the word at all in that. I'm impressed with myself. All right, so we know now, if you've listened to all three parts, that every couple has mismatches. Every couple has mismatches. The best couples have mismatches. That's not proof of incompatibility. It's just proof that you're human. But if you don't talk about them, if you're not intentional about them, then that's where you get those damaging stories that you're telling yourself up in your head, right? You don't want me. You don't see me. I don't matter to you. You don't value how I am. Every couple I've ever worked with in 32 years has faced these differences in at least one of these areas. Okay. You're not unique or special in that way. And maybe as you've been listening, you've thought, yeah, that's us. We struggle with this. And that's exactly where we get stuck. Well, as I said continually throughout this three-part series, mismatches don't have to divide you. They can actually be your greatest teacher if you're willing to learn from them. And as I said before, a mismatched libido can teach you patience and creativity. A mismatched love language can teach you to love more selflessly. And a mismatched lifestyle can teach you to balance each other instead of battling each other. So my challenge to you is this. Instead of asking, why aren't we the same? Why can't you be more like me is what it typically sounds like. I want you to start asking, what could these differences teach us about loving each other better? Because at the heart of all of this, marriage isn't about sameness, it's about oneness. Oneness isn't two identical people moving in lockstep. Remember Amos 3:3? It's two different people learning to walk together, adjusting their stride to accommodate the other, and choosing over and over and over again to keep moving in the same direction. So the next time you bump up against the mismatches in your relationship, instead of thinking, we're never going to get this right, just ask yourself, what can this teach us about loving each other better going forward? Okay, that's it. That's the end of our 3-part series. Thank you, as always, for listening. If today's episode encouraged you, please like, please subscribe, and pass it along to someone who can use their own word of hope. And don't just listen. Take something you heard today and put it into practice this week. And if you need help with this, as I've already said, maybe it's time to consider my Marriage in Bloom program. Just reach out to me. We can set up a free call and we can go from there. That's it for today. Remember, as always, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to stay teachable.